Right, now it's just gone 9 o'clock and it's a welcome to everybody here today to hear the Waste Management Bylaw Hearings and Deliberations. First, we have got one speaker who has come to talk to us this morning, and we'll have, 10 minutes. And I think, welcome to the seat, Andrea Lee. Would you like to come forward and address the councillors here, and hopefully you've got something to say to us. And morning. And councillors are here to ask questions of clarification on your submission, the Master Builder's submission. It's no comments at this stage, just questions, so the floor is yours. Thank you.
Pretty much I said to Richard yesterday that I'd happily be here to answer your questions. We had a meeting, as you all know, with Richard, and it was, I think, really good outcome. Pretty much I'm just here to answer your questions. We've got all the information, basically, as far as we're concerned. Just keep it simple and it will work. And the proposal at the moment we don't think will. So we're here to answer your questions, basically. If we can give you all the information under the sun as to how it won't work. But I think if we work together, we can get it to... Recycling is a big thing for all of us. We're all trying, but we've got a few stumbling blocks ahead of us as far as what we do with it. And it's not easy for the guys to do the work at the moment. So I think if the council spend their time making it easy, you'll have a lot better outcome. I've just showed Richard, for us to do something that we've been given recently by Brands, which is the form that we believe will be used in any future jobs. There is this many pages, I believe there's 9, that every builder would have to fill out per job for waste management plan. That is not going to happen. You're going to find builders will take their stuff to their local mate that's a farmer and dump it in a hole and burn it. It's just, so we need to work with them to make it easy and encourage them to recycle. We had some ideas, but that's whether it's achievable or not. Start simple is really how we think it should be. Encourage them to dump their cardboard and their poly and their steel, and then they'll start looking for more stuff. But if you go in with a big plan of trying to break down everything, it's just not going to happen. There's about 7 skips per site on average of a normal Gary McCormick bin that builders use. We've got ours down to 4, and that's paper, steel, but your basic, go back to the suppliers, get boxing, get lights to come in big boxes rather than individual boxes with individual bags. Packaging is huge. It is probably, I'd say, 30 to 40% of what goes in the skip. Yeah, but I'm happy for questions from you guys as well.
Thank you for that. I'll ask a question first. The products, building products that have tape back arrangements, what percentage of that is the rubbish?
It varies. So it depends, I think, on your deal with your suppliers. We've got things like the Pink Bats installation. They take away scraps and leftover half bags, return full bags, so we have no waste going into the skip with those. There's options, so like Resine take their paint buckets back, but the painters have to take them or we have to. So it's all those little stumbling blocks that cost time. So we've got for example, we had a big poly pod just go down recently, and the poly suppliers take the offcuts back. They supply us with big bags. Those big bags sat on site for 7 weeks, and they hadn't had a truck coming this way to pick them up. So we had to pay $380 to put them on a truck to take them back to Christchurch. So it's all those things that make things hard. That took up the site. You've got site space available, and as we get more density in the housing, there's less space on site for everybody to store their waste while it's waiting to go somewhere. So the take back options that they're putting in place for some of the bigger groups maybe find it easier, but your smaller 1-man, 5-man bands are just going to find it exceptionally costly. If the suppliers picked it up in a timely manner, fantastic, we'd all get on board. But when it's sitting there for 7 weeks, it's just not achievable.
Thank you. We have a question from Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. Hey, you talked about, you can give us a lot of reasons why it won't work, and you've mentioned 7 bins, so that takes up a lot of room and a lot of space.
They get swapped out, so as they get full, they get swapped out.
And you've mentioned the lengthy form that people aren't going to do. So what what else? Just give us a clue as to what's really is it the cost or
Cost
what?
is a huge thing. As you all know, cost of building's gone up exponentially.
So it's cost $380 to send the poly back that wasn't collected.
Correct.
What will be the other costs involved in it apart
You've got
from filling the time?
The sorting time, the staff to sort it. You've got
So it's not easy just to biff it when you get the cardboard, to biff that in the cardboard bin and.
You'd have to have a separate cardboard bin. So currently on our sites, if you're on a small tight site, you've got toilets and rubbish bins and areas for roofing to be delivered and timber and all those things. So to have, it's been trialled in Auckland, just as an example. They've had 5 bins on site on some trial sites. It lasted about a year and they've just folded it. It just did not work. One of the biggest stumbling blocks we've got is where to take the product. I use an example of, and I'm happy to put our name to it, where we had a trailer load of poly to take to the dump, off carts, which were rejected. They said
Rejected, sorry to interrupt, rejected here.
Yes, at the recycling centre. So normally they just take it, it's fine. It was obviously maybe a bit too much. That staff member said that it was going to cost $25 to dump it. So they literally wanted Mike to drive around, go to the other thing, pay $25 and dump it into landfill. So here's someone trying to do the right thing, recycling the product, but they got turned around there. He just went back the next day, got a different staff member, and they took the recycling. So things like that, we're quite proactive. We didn't want to dump it, so he drove away and went back and tried it again. So if we can fix that side of it and have an easy option that's not going to cost the guys too much money to do it, because that invariably gets passed on to the homeowner. I put a proposal through to a few of our members and said, what would you think if the council added, say, $150 to a consent, and then they would take our poly and recycling at the recycling depot? Some like, oh, I wouldn't want to pay for that, and the owners wouldn't want to pay for it. And I said, well, they're going to pay for it somewhere, so do you put it on to us or do you put it onto the consent so that it's a consent fee? But the jury's out on that one.
So can I just ask another question, please?
Okay.
With regards to the poly and the dumping fee, the council didn't take it because of the volume. It was too big a volume, is that right?
I honestly don't have an answer to that. I think that the first person said that, the second person didn't have a problem with it, so just a little bit of inconsistency.
Thank you. Liz.
Thanks, Andrea. Just in the document there was mention of homes being built over $500,000. So how many homes would you be building that cost over $500,000? Is it the majority,
most
or
of
is
them
it?
now.
They are most of them.
I mean, some of the smaller homes are still around the 400 mark, but it's getting really. I mean, the figures we throw around at the moment, pre-COVID, was probably 2,000 a square metre. We're looking at 3 to 3.5 now for just an average house, starting house per square metre. There's some figures around, and I don't have factual figures. This is just hearsay and conversations that people have, usually over a few beers at master builders meetings. That some of the Homestar rating homes that are being built, like in Auckland and Whaikainga Ora, they're getting up around the $4,500 to $5,000 a square metre mark, and that is because of the cost to meet the Homestar rating. So out of that, I know, for example, someone that does Kauranga Ora homes and they do the recycling rubbish, they cannot use local rubbish skips here. It has to be picked up by a company in Christchurch and is taken to Christchurch and sorted, and it costs them about $3,500 per job. We pay about maybe $1,700 maximum for rubbish on a job to dump it. So you're doubling the fees to take it to a recycling plant, and out of that, I believe the percentage of stuff that can be recycled is only about 20%. So, yeah.
Richard. Awesome.
Morning. Are you finding this pressure from your clients, from the building, sort of in two avenues? One, what trumps is the dollar they pay in total, or is it, there'll be some people that are green evangelists, I'd call them. That's more important than the money. Are you finding that? What's the most common thought from a client?
From my experience,
yeah,
probably 80% of the clients come in with a green thought process behind their build, and want to do something, whether it be solar or. They don't generally worry about rubbish. In fact, most of them want to try and avoid paying to dump rubbish. A lot of them say, we've got a friend, or we can take the timber and burn it on a bonfire, or there's lots of those conversations. Most of them, the cost of going green is prohibitive, and it gets pulled out. So the new H1 rules obviously have ticked a few of those boxes, and now homes are getting built a lot warmer. We've just handed over a house in Methven. They moved it on the southerly night a couple of weeks ago and rang up the next day and said they'd had to turn the air conditioning on to cool their house down. They were too hot. So that's definitely making the homes warmer, but the money that it's putting into it, I think, is overkill. So I think, yeah, it's going to be interesting. The government's reviewing, I believe, the H1 rules at the moment, and if they pull that back, then people might have a little bit more money to put into being greener. Most companies are doing really well at trying to reduce it, but I think packaging is your biggest thing. At the end of a job, when we are unpacking appliances, vanities, all those sort of things, most of them have plastic, poly and cardboard, and then plastic strapping. And that's just about every product that comes onto the building site. Yeah. I don't know how we get around that, because otherwise it'll be damaged when it arrives, and then you've got product getting dumped. So,
Right, we'll go to Lane Brown and
Thank you. Hi, Andrea. Long time no see.
been a while.
Hey, is there a better option? Can you see something what can be done, what is easier and works?
I think, for me, knowing builders, I mean, a lot of our companies, certainly in mid-Canterbury, are small companies. So if you start, this is my mind, if you start simple, and not spoon feed them, but if you make it easy and encourage them to dump cardboard and steel at a recycling centre for a couple of months trial, once they get into the mindset of looking for stuff, once it becomes easy, they'll do it. But if you just throw a list of, you must do these paperwork to put in with your consent, to follow these rules, to tick these boxes, day one they're going to look at that form and it's going to get thrown in the bin. So I think if it's something that's simple, if we can work together to encourage, like we discussed with Richard about having a meeting at the recycling depot with our master builders and say, look, this is what we can take. If they go, oh, that's easy, I'll just drop that off on the way back from site. You know, you might get 50% on board that day, and then slowly you'll filter more in. There's always going to be people that do well and always people that don't. But if you get the majority on board easily, I think, you know, you could double the recycling that comes out of the building sites. How you cover the cost of that, I don't know. One of our questions was, you know, what happens to the recycling? And invariably we can't get a clear answer. If we know that cardboard or that steel is getting recycled and it's funding a charitable project or it's paying for another staff member at the dump, then more people will do it. But if we're dropping it off and making the effort to collect it, deliver it, and then we find out that it's going to landfill because no one's taking that stuff, why is anyone going to do it? So it's about having that communication and information. Like we all used to take our poly to Wastebusters when it used to go there and get melted down. You know, do we get a machine like that in mid-Canterbury and then everybody will bring, there's more and more polystyrene going into homes. It's all going into our slabs now, so we have offcuts. We can't join it. We've got to cut the bits off. There's going to be wastage. You know, do we work together to... We're certainly happy to help out with that and try and get as many... And I know Johnny from Certified as well was here on behalf of, he's happy to get on board with his guys too. So that's probably 60 to 70% of the builders in mid-Canterbury that we can work together with.
thank you.
Thank you.
A final question from Mayor Brown.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew, for your presentation. You can take all the steel and the cardboard and that to the Resource Recovery Park now for nothing.
We certainly take all our poly
Anyone
and our
can.
cardboard,
Anyone can,
and a lot of guys take their poly steel up and take it down to the metal recyclers and get $20 for a trailer load. Or,
Correct.
You know,
So you can do those things now. So
Yes,
this
you
is
can.
next level is what we're presenting. You had some forms there, and I just missed what they were for.
it was so that was the proposal. So with the proposal for the waste management plan that they want us to do, the proposal that we're talking about today.
Who's they?
So the brands have come through with a whole lot of information that from REBI, which is a recycling building material waste, and this is the form that they're proposing that councils are going to be asking us to do with consent applications for our waste management plan. I'll leave it here.
It's not council. That's
So
someone.
this
your
is
organisation.
brands have sent all this information through. So quite recently, there's been a lot of push for waste reduction. I printed this off, and I'll leave it for you guys just to have a look through. One of the biggest things that I've found in my 20 years doing what I've done in my 10 years on Master Builders president, most of the emails that come out, most of the production, most of this paperwork that's spent hundreds of thousands of dollars putting together, the builders read the first line, you lose them straight away. It's written in, I wouldn't say demeaning terminology, but it's basically like talking to children, and it's just, it's not going to get read. It literally doesn't get past the email stage, let alone printed off or read. If you get a bigger company where they've got staff doing that, 100%. But for most of the builders in our district, certainly I can speak for, probably 70% of them are under 7 staff, and a husband and wife team, this stuff doesn't get read.
Yeah.
So-
If you could table that, that would be great, so we could have a look at it. That
Yeah,
would be
obviously
good.
we'll, yeah.
I was just thinking for what we were thinking of doing for building waste, I don't envisage there was any forms to fill out apart from different bins to put different types of product in.
I think it'd be really good. I've got some information which I'll forward on to Richard from some people in Master Builders who've trialled stuff in Auckland and Hamilton, which could be useful for council as well. Just to,
The other question is, what's the cost of a skip to get rid of it?
depending on who you go through, between an average of probably $350.
350, and you say there's 7 per build. Seven
Oh,
skips.
4 to 7, depending
4
on
to 7.
Yeah,
Yeah, so there's 1,200 to 2.
yeah. Between 1,200 and 2,000 would be the
Yeah.
most that we'd pay to dump rubbish. Keeping in mind, when we out of those skips, we probably take 3 skips away in recycling.
Yeah, so if you had recycling skips there as well, then you would only be paying, in my information I've got, just for delivering the skip, nothing for disposing of it. The disposal would be free because it's recycling.
So there's a cardboard skip available through Gary McCormick's where you can fill it with cardboard, and I believe it's about $12 to dump or to handle that from the hire of the skip plus the $12 fee.
It'll be handling, I'd think, because the depositing of the recycling at the recovery park is free.
Yeah.
Ratepayers picking up that.
Yeah, I believe
cost.
someone commented, and I don't know how factual this is, but they don't like taking big bulk lots at the recovery park, so they've got to take it in stages. Someone has experienced that. I'm not sure how factual that is, but it'd be good to get some clarification around that, and that's where we say maybe with
those
Richard.
myths would be good to be busted, because what's the point of the park if they're not going to take big locks?
Correct, yeah, and that's something
Defeats
that I
the
think
purpose.
if we can have a meeting maybe between Master Builders and Certified and the recovery park and get some really clear lines about what they'll take, when they'll take it, and how much they'll take at a time, then you'll probably find that you'll see a lot more come in.
Yeah. So perhaps there's a lack of education, information
Yeah, for sure.
on what can go to the park. or
That's just having those
buildings.
conversations. You only know what you know, right? And
That's right.
if
And
we
you
can-
won't know until you ask the question.
correct. So I think if we can lead the builders lead them to the water, they'll drink it. It's just a matter of making it easy.
Yeah. So dumping the rubbish is about, say, 2.5, 3 grand for a build. It's not
Yeah, that would be, well, 2.5, 3 grand for the Homestar rate at the high end.
top end. It's not a lot of money for the cost of the building.
No, for
5,
sure.
6, 700,000.
And it's built into the cost, and technically the homeowner or the company pays for that.
When we
it's-
deliberate, we'll do some work and see whether recycling would lower that cost. Might be a little bit more work on site to put it in the different bins, but if it's deposited there free instead of on a weight basis for your rubbish, it may lower cost, but we'll do some work when we deliberate on that.
Absolutely, we certainly save, we save 3 skips easy by recycling what we recycle. So that's, $900 out of a job for a client that we're saving, and it's only a matter of maybe 4 hours work. So that's, we find that's useful to do. So it's making, giving those figures to people, and they go, oh, actually, yeah, okay, we'll do that. It's going to save us $400.
Yeah, that's some good questions there for us to ponder when we deliberate, so
Yeah.
thank you for that.
You're finished there. Thank you. Thank you, Andrea, for this information. I think it's very valuable that we've listened to you and learned a few things. Oh, we've got one. Oh, got another question. Lane.
Yes, we're talking about getting bins on site. How much space do you normally around the house?
Don't.
How many? None. So
But- and
basically,
that-
one
this
is
is what Auckland found when they trialled the bins. So they had, from memory, 2 metal bins, which took metal and general waste, and then they had your wool bags stapled to fences. So on some sites there's fences to staple that too. Some sites there's not. They found a lot of the issues was with wind, and Auckland doesn't have as much wind as we have here. Things like polystyrene, trying to secure that on site is a nightmare. So if anything like that is going to work as long as it's collected efficiently. So it's who's going to collect it or who's going to take it to the dump. I mean, if we had a deal with like the metal recyclers, for example, that would come to site once every Friday, they'd do an area, guys would leave the metal out and they could pick it up and take it away. There's things we can put in place. But yeah, site space is a big one, and for WorkSafe, we've got to keep those sites safe. If we have a lot of stuff lying around, then we have more incidents on site. So the biggest thing is the contamination as well. So I know with Auckland when they trialled it, was someone had chucked their banana skin in one of the electrical bags, for example, because it looked emptier than the other one. So they were thrown. So as soon as that happens, it's contaminated, and then you're paying to dump it. So they had a lot of teething issues. The biggest issue they had was what they did with that recycling afterwards. the volumes that went through, they couldn't handle it, and it ended up getting canned. So I don't believe it's been re-kicked up yet. There's bits of it that have stayed in place, but the overall was cardboard, poly, steel, was pretty much where they landed.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your submission, and it's great to know that you're recycling the best way you can, all the builders are.
I'd say 50% of builders are probably doing a great job. There's some that do nothing, but most of us are doing, at least trying to do as much as we can.
Thank you very much.
Well,
Right,
I'll leave that there.
you're welcome to stay if you like and listen to the rest of it, and
She's got to go to an appointment. Thank you.
okay, thank you. Right, councillors, we shall invite Richard to the chair, and Rando and Justin. I think Richard's going to lead us through, we'll go on to the document, the draft solid waste management, the hearings, submissions.
Yeah, I think at this point, Madam Chair, I'd recommend you just work through the summary of feedback, which contains the feedback from the other 57 submitters.
Has everybody got that document up? The draft solid waste management and minimisation bylaw summary of feedback. Right. Richard, I'll let you.
Yep. Ordinarily at this point we just work through it page by page.
Yes.
So page 4 just summarises the feedback on the first question. So I think really, Madam Chair, it's if members have any questions or observations on the document as you go through page by page. When we come to our PowerPoint presentation, we've got some recommendations, but it's a bit early for us to be discussing those.
Okay. So we've got, everyone's happy with page 4, and we'll move on to page 5. Has anyone got any comments of any of the submitters? Is it, yeah. It's not up on the screens.
Do you want this document up on screen?
Yes, if we could, please. Yes.
Okay.
Just a question, if
We've got
that's
a
okay.
question from Councillor McMillan.
I just note that the submitter, Stephanie Paul, has she's given a couple of examples about the Glow in the Park event and how well that Eco-Educate ran that waste minimisation scheme, I suppose. And then she's also written about a private event. So obviously people are going to notice the difference between private events and ones that are on council land. So is there any sort of guidelines that could be given to private events that are running, or do we just, if they ring up to say how do we sort out our waste, do you just give them Eco-Educate's number and pass that on? And how does it work? Like, how will that work? Because, well, yes, we have to concentrate on the on our council events or on council property. It would be good to see that other events are sort of doing something similar. How do we encourage that through this?
Who would like to answer that of this? Amanda or Justin?
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, it's probably an education thing as well. Eco-Educate, we do pay them to basically give education to anyone who really needs it. So, yeah, if they contacted us, we can send them out there just for advice, and maybe it comes down to we add a bit more after this bylaw has gone through, we add a bit more to our website for that sort of reason, for private events.
Thank you. Right, we'll move on to page 6. Any comments there anyone would like to make on the submitters? Phil. Pardon?
I just had a question around, can somebody please explain to me or tell me how big, if somebody's hosting an event in, or should I wait till they're set up? Maybe?
If we go to
No, I'm not going to ask about event size.
So I didn't catch the question.
If there's an event on council land, how big is the plan itself, the waste minimisation plan that an event holder has to fill out?
What the team are working to with templates to make it as simple as possible. Obviously, if it's a larger event with more complexity, it's going to be a bigger document. But I think we're picking up the point that Andrea made in regard to construction site waste minimisation plans. If you make it too hard, it becomes a barrier to people doing events. So we're looking to try and keep it as simple as possible. For example, you can have, if someone's doing an event for the first time and they don't have a feel for the volumes, then we can, there's good guidance here. If you're expecting 200 people, then you load this volume of waste. So there's things like that you can do to make it as easy as possible. And we're certainly not interested in making it a bureaucratic nightmare.
So why is a bigger event more complex than a smaller event as far as filling out a plan goes? Surely it's all about, isn't it about maths? If there's 200 people, like you say, then you're likely to have this much rubbish. If it's a massive event and it's 5,000 people, then you're likely to have this much. It's not more detailed though, is it?
It could be that you've got more bins in more places. It could be different kinds of vendors, different kinds of waste streams. Okay. I think in broad principle I understand what you're saying and I broadly agree.
Yeah.
But my experience in markets is A, as a customer, and B, as my wife's gopher, and as I've never run one to know all the intricacies of making it happen on the day.
Okay, so the templates that we have currently, how many pages would they be sort of to fill out?
Honestly, don't know.
Okay.
But I could certainly find out from Sarah.
Yeah, we currently don't have a template but we plan to put out a one-page template for the start.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right. Lane.
Can we just go back, one back, scroll back if you
Want
can.
to go back to page 5?
Yeah, just leave it there. There's some people say, I have an ID. What, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, so what are the other IDs? Do we know that or not?
Yes, we do, and it's in the table that follows.
Okay.
So in the table, I've organised them by all the people that expressed a preference for all events, and then people that favour status quo, so they're organised that way. And so as we go through, you'll see the people who had another idea and what their ideas are.
Thank you. Richard.
I'd just like to clarify, because people are talking about the events thing, and I've looked up what is an event. To understand that we said glow in the park, those sort of things are very easy to rationalise. They're a big event, that one-off. So on council land, does that include all the reserves? Like if I use an example, say the Southern Rugby Club has a open country day at Hinds, is that considered an event or is that separate to this?
At the moment, we define event by the number of participants and by whether it requires a road closure. And in fact, I'm pretty sure the definition is in the draft bylaw itself.
It doesn't mention it, just says, means an organisation, temporary activity of significant scale is likely to create litter, including but not limited to an organised gathering, open air market, parade, protest, festival, film, shop, concert or celebration. It's quite, that's why I was just, because some of the people have said they don't believe, but I just like to define, so to rationalise what they were meaning. Yep.
Would you like to?
No, you're correct, that is the definition, and it's not sufficiently precise, is your concern?
Because if I read, when we look at some of the submitters, they talked about, you know, overreach, because would that mean that, I'll use, the Methven has an open day, a club day in Methven where they've got lots of people and they may put a few cones out to stop people parking on the roadside. Is that an event? So would they have to have a waste minimisation plan for that event?
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
If it meets the definition in the bylaw, then it is an event. Yeah,
So then would a rugby game be an event too?
if it meets the definition in the bylaw.
Yes.
Yes.
Sort of was.
Thank you. Liz, you had a question? No. Okay. Phil.
Thank you. I just wanted to gather your thoughts, team, on James Reed's comment around more red tape, but more around, I kind of like the idea of an event holder is warned about fines if they do not clean up after themselves, and the fines cover the cost of cleaning up after them, but adding on some more as a deterrent. And therefore, as a council, we just say, right, hold your event, it's up to you to clean up after yourself. Can I gather your thoughts on that?
I've got some thoughts. There were a number of submitters, I wouldn't have said a majority, but a number of submitters expressed concern about red tape. And I think that when we are going to have regulatory requirements, that those regulatory requirements need to stack up in terms of costs and benefits, that the benefit from having a requirement isn't exceeded by the costs for the people that have to comply with it. I don't think all regulation is necessarily bad regulation, but there's certainly some bad regulation that isn't cost effective. We came to the conclusion on construction site waste management minimisation plans that they're probably not cost effective as a solution. We didn't come to the same conclusion around event waste management minimisation plans. The second point is around carrots and sticks, really. We've taken the view that if we work and educate and encourage people to use eco-educate, that we'll get a good result, and that's been our experience. We think it's a more positive approach than saying we don't expect you to have a waste minimisation plan, but if we find any rubbish left behind, then we're coming after you with a fine. One of the other options you could have is that, particularly with large events, road closures, etc., you could have a bonding arrangement for the reinstatement, but that also creates, which is just a variation on the fine, really.
Right.
And you've got the negative connotation in there, and also for some events, you know, it adds a cost up front before they've had a chance to recoup the money. So, pros and cons.
Yeah, I guess there'd be a concern that maybe if it was left to the event organiser that they just put a giant big skippy bin in and everything goes in that. But as consumers, I think we expect more than that, and that would shine a bad light on that event and that event organisers. So I think there'd be public pressure for them not to do that. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Brown.
Yeah, we just heard that the definition of the event is in the bylaw. So I've just had a look in the bylaw for event, and it says that an event means any organised temporary activity of significant scale that is likely to create litter, including, but not limited to, an organised gathering, open-air market, parade, protest, festival, film shoot, concert or celebration. So who decides what a significant scale is? Because there's not a definition of significant scale. Is it 10 people at a protest or 200? Who makes that decision in the bylaw? Because it's not clear.
Yeah, I've certainly seen reference to, in some council document, of a scale of 1,000 people. But it's clearly not the definition that's in the bylaw, so I apologise for that. Unless, of course, there's a definition of significant scale, but that would be, no, not the case. So I think you're right. I don't think you want to capture 10 people necessarily having a small protest, but there is a scale at which you do. Yeah. And we may need to come back with some words around that to define what you consider a significant scale event. We're trying to capture as many events as we can, particularly where food's concerned, because of the litter issue, and also because it's an education opportunity as we move towards the FOGO collection to get people into the practice of separating their food organics.
If you had organised a protest, you might think you're only going to get 10 people, but then 20,000 turn up. You won't know in a protest until they rock up, I wouldn't think. So it needs to be simple, but it needs to be clear, but it doesn't need to be onerous either. And getting all those things practical, chuck that word in there too. It's not simple, but we need to do it properly.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we can.
Hamish, you'd like to say something?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I think that Mayor's final comment is the absolute problem with having a defined number to measure scale, because no event I've ever been involved with can accurately predict how many people are going to come. And so you've got to think about the scale as opposed to deciding that 25 people is significant and 24 isn't, because 26 turn up and suddenly the event organiser's in the gun, but they had no way of knowing. So you do need some absolute flexibility to judge what might look like a significant event, and don't try and define it too exactly, because you'll end up with all sorts of bureaucratic hoops to jump through, because events are not as black and white and as linear as that definition would imply.
Thank you. Liz?
Thank you, and I'm just thinking from experience, running our walking festival in Methven, we have to make a application, an event application, because some of the walks are on council land. So and there's quite a few pieces of forms to fill out, and I know that's going to be simplified in the future, but just having maybe a one-pager about the waste management of the event would be good. But obviously if people had a large scale, which is similar to Glow in the Park or something like that, then there would obviously be more information that you would need. But I just think now, with all the forms that you're filling in to apply for an event, you don't want to make it too hard, and just keep it simple. And I suppose that's what James is talking about with the red tape, etc. But got to have something in there, but it needs to just sort of be user friendly as well.
It's just a comment I was going to make before I go to Russell, is we want people to create events in this town. We need them, and we can't be too strict, otherwise all the service clubs and everyone will just say no, it's too hard, and you'll have nothing. I'll go over to Russell.
Thank you. What happens with the likes of our farmers market? That's an event that's held every Saturday. Car club regularly applies for road closure for likes of street sprints, or no, not so much the street sprints, I'm thinking more the quarter mile that they'll do. Do they then have to have a waste minimisation plan for a quarter mile street race type thing. Bukarama has a lot of people go through there. That's in a one-off event each year, but that's on private property, so they shouldn't need a waste minimisation plan, or should they? So so some things in there that this will capture that we just need to think about too, to keep it simple.
So that's the scope. The scope is events on council-owned or managed land. So if Bukarama's indoor, private building outside the scope of the bylaw.
Yep. Farmers market and like a road closure for the car club then would become, they'd fall into that.
Well, car club would be on a public road, so you've got a road closure, so it certainly would trigger an event approval. And the question then is, are people being catered for at that event? Are there food trucks there, or is it?
Thank you. Right, Carolyn.
Just a step away from Russell's question initially, like, you have at the Domain big groups of picnickers. Is that an event? They're all turning up because Ashburton College reunion lunch at the Domain. Is that an event? And everybody brings their picnic.
Yeah, highlighting a point that's, I think, been clearly made.
Yeah.
More work to do on the definition of an event.
Yeah, that's right, because they're individuals turning up. I think that is not an event, and I think that would be everybody that turns up puts their rubbish in the rubbish bin. But we're talking it as an event. People need to supply their own rubbish bins. I don't think for an event, a genuine event like the circus or like Sparks in the Park or whatever, I don't think the ratepayer should pick up other people's rubbish. So if it's difficult to fill in the event form or the waste minimisation plan form, then we need to make that easier. But regardless, it shouldn't be up to the ratepayer of the council to pick up the waste from that event. So I think
Thank you.
I think that's
Richard.
Probably I've just had to rethink about further to clarify, so that if an organisation has a right to occupy, like so if we use the rugby club as a good example, the showgrounds, they have an agreement to be there all the time. They wouldn't have to fill out one of these, would they? Because they would be there all the time. So that would
Well, it's also not council land.
sorry, then if I use the Southern Rugby Club on the Hind Reserve, that's council-owned land. So effectively, if they've got a licence to occupy, they wouldn't have to be filling out one of these because they're all. Would they? Or
I think they're responsible to the reserve board, are they not?
Yes, they
The
are.
reserve board would do that.
I honestly think that we've highlighted an issue,
Yes.
and we're, to Richard's last statement, we've got more work to do on the definition of an event. And so let us do that and bring that piece back to you, because we can all think of confusing examples, but that's not advancing this year. And we've got an issue. We'll go away and think about that.
So I think we're just going to go round and round in circles, and we've got to go through these submissions. Phil.
Thank you. How do you know offhand how much it costs to get Eco Educate on board? A, for advice around minimisation for an event, and then B, if they follow through, and then I assume they're employed to help at the event as well. Do you guys know?
Through the chair, we definitely pay EcoEducate per event. I just don't have that cost on top of my head, but we pay per event. They claim for us every month in every event that they attend to.
I'm more thinking of an event organiser. Say we cut through all the definitions and the red tape, and we said, right, it's your responsibility to clean up after your event. If you don't do it, then we're going to fine. Can we suggest that you talk to Leslie and the team at Eco Educate, get some advice on what's your best plan, or employ them to help you on the day clean up after yourselves or during the event? Is that an option, and how much does that cost?
Yeah, so they are available for information for free. So that would be turn up at the education centre at the recovery park. They'll speak to you freely, explain everything that you need to know. But as far as if they wanted to employ them to clean up afterwards, that would be more sounds like a private arrangement that they would have with them rather than us pay for that.
Okay.
If we're going to do something, then generally what we would do is they would control the event from start to finish
Yes.
with all of the
Yeah.
material.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if the person running the event thinks, oh man, this is just too much for me to handle, I'm going to get them in. They can do their stand and educate, and then put the right bins around. Then that would be a great option.
Yep. So that's definitely what they do.
Okay, thanks.
Right. We'll move on to page, where we got to page 8. Any comments there and submitters? Right, we'll move down to page 9. And then we hit the next, the feedback on the construction site waste. Do you want to go through this page here, Richard, or?
This is an example where we went out with a preferred option because we thought it was useful to start the conversation, and the conversation went in completely the opposite direction to our recommendation. So it was a win that we got a good conversation. It doesn't look like the crystal ball was working very well at the time we made the initial recommendation around the option, but I do think, and we also, interestingly enough, got a lot of submitters saying that they thought a construction site WMMP should be mandatory. And I think what we discovered as we worked through that is that the logic of if you have a plan, it solves everything, doesn't stack up very well. And I think Andrea illustrated that really well today, as she did when Dan and I met with her and Kate and Jonathan in September. So,
Right. Cool.
yeah, I think just invite you to work through pages 11 and following.
I've got a first question here from Mayor Brown.
It's back on page 8, and submitter Taylor talks about that it all ends up in rubbish anyway. And we heard from Andrea, like she said, I think it was her question, or I've read it somewhere that, I think it was her question, what happens to it when it gets to recovery park, and what's the point of doing it if it all ends up in the rubbish? So do we have any figures on events we hold, or even materials that go to the park, which is supposed to be recycling, but isn't, and ends up in rubbish? Do we have that percentage? Like, is their comment here valid? Because it all ends up in rubbish anyway.
Who'd like to answer that, Justin?
Yeah, so material that goes through the recovery part goes and gets sorted and is recycled. What Andrea mentioned about polystyrene was one. So we have an agreement with Expol to take residential polystyrene. They won't take commercial loads. They explained to us that would be up to whoever's purchased that material to return any leftovers themselves. So they won't take that from us. The reason we charge for it and then put it in the pit so it goes to Cape Valley is because Cape Valley will charge us for polystyrene. The price that we charge at the recovery park is related to the price that we charge from Cape Valley. We have a minimum charge, which is roughly a trailer load, because polystyrene is very light, so it's hard to weigh. But the price from Cape Valley is just over, for this year, I think it's just over $8,000 a tonne. So it's quite tricky to work out if someone comes in with half a trailer load. So we've gone on a trailer load, basically, was probably the $25 Andrea was talking about. But yeah, everything else that goes through our parks is recycled. Yeah.
So just on the polystyrene, I know we've had this discussion some time ago with polystyrene. They won't take the big loads, but they'll take the little loads. You get 15 little loads, makes one big load. Where's the common sense in that? We're either in the game or we're not, is where I'm sort of pointing.
Yeah, I suppose it comes down to we haven't got anywhere else for it to go. So Expol will take back our residential stuff. They will take commercial stuff, but not from us. We can do it if we're prepared to pay the money for
So,
it.
yeah, okay. So, they will do it, they've got to pay the money. With the, I think it's the building stuff goes to the park, then someone sorts it there and into different, does they get sorted there at the moment, is that what you said, or not?
Not builders,
No.
polystyrene, no.
Or all building materials, all wood and all sorts of stuff?
No, we don't sort that.
You don't sort nothing, no.
No, that's up to, so if a builder comes in and he's got a trailer, a mixed load, the idea would be if you're pulling out any metal, for example, you can drive through the recycle drop off and separate things there, and what you've got left in your trailer, well, you'll pay for rubbish.
Yes, you go through it, yeah, got it. Go through it and drop it off. Yeah, that's all good, thanks.
Okay.
What about when you have an event and you've got all the bins lined up, is that all recycling, or is some of it contaminated, it's gone, people have put it in the wrong bins, the stuff in the wrong bin?
If eco educator at the events, it's sorted as people drop material off into the correct bin, so everything's sorted on the spot.
So that will all be recycled?
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you. Carolyn?
A couple of questions, please. We heard from the submitter, from Andrea, that the big loads of cardboard the recovery park wouldn't take. You know, when the builders return all their cardboard, what happens to that? Why won't you take that? Or why isn't it taken?
Yeah, no, that was a bit confusing. They should take that. Shouldn't be an issue with it, so I can follow that one up. And
So the big loads of cardboard that a builder will bring round to the recovery park will be taken for free? For free. Can I go to the polystyrene question again? You know, you talked about the polystyrene will be taken away for personal use from the recovery park and recycled. Oh, and no, you didn't say recycled. Is it recycled when it's taken away, or what happens to it when it's taken away?
yeah, so Expol's a little bit different to what was mentioned with Wastebusters. So what Expol do is actually pull it apart again, so into little beads. They'll mix that with virgin material and make new products out of it.
Okay. So, can I ask another question? Yes. So, a builder could get Expol to take, at a charge, take their polystyrene away, and it would be recycled?
Yep.
And that cost, did I hear that correct? It was about $380?
Yeah,
Was
I think she said $380 for
Is that-
that was her transport. I think she said to get it to
Christchurch somewhere? Yeah. And then, so that was for transportation, and then did Expol charge the builder for the stuff they're going to recycle?
I'm not sure how their charging works for that.
Okay. And one more question. When we take the polystyrene bag, it's light, and we charge $25 for whatever, and you look at it and you say $25. It takes up a lot of room, so in the truck. So it might, even though it's light, it might take disproportionately more room than should be allocated on a weight basis. Is that given consideration? Because it's quite hard stuff. You can't just...
Yeah. So we don't charge for residential. So that,
No, but,
that's free.
I'm not interested in that, if I may be so bold. I'm more interested in the cost to the ratepayer for taking the trucks up and down the road if they're filled with light polystyrene, because it's big and bulky but light as heck. Does the charge reflect the true cost in that at $25 a trailer or whatever it is you charge?
Sorry, I think just to help, if I may, our charges reflect the charges at Cape Valley. So we are told what it will cost when it gets to Cape Valley, and so we extrapolate that back so that the ratepayers aren't subsidising that.
I'm looking at the opportunity cost of a vehicle going up the road and for $25 or whatever of a big truck, and we charge that at Cape Valley. But there's other there's a driver and a person and a petrol and carbon emissions and all the rest of it. I'm thinking about that. So that is not a genuine. We charge $25, and that might fill up one of our trucks. So it's not a genuine reflection of the cost involved to the ratepayer of the Esperance District Council.
I think you'll find if you look at the fees and charges for polystyrene at the resource recovery parks, it's a rate that reflects the problem you've described of the volume it takes up. It's significantly more per tonne than green waste or general rubbish.
Thank you, Richard. That was my question. Thank you.
Russell?
Thank you. Did we give any consideration when we went out with this pulled 500,000 out of the air and we made that our cut-off. But how the waste minimisation was going to work, like, were we expecting 6 bins on site or just one recycling bin and one rubbish bin, and that recycling bin went back to you guys and then got sorted back there? I know there's risk of contamination in that, so, but did we, I don't think we gave any thought actually how it was going to work, did we?
Well, I can't talk about when this first went out because it's been in your bylaw for 8-10 years. But when I was receiving submissions, considering what they were doing and thinking, how does the intervention logic work? If they do a plan, how does that result in less waste to landfill? And then we had the meeting with the builders and others. It wasn't stacking up, and I'm not the most practical guy, but people like Justin and Hernando and the builders, they are practical people, and it didn't seem that we had thought it through. But I've got to say, there's an awful lot of other councils that have got similar things in bylaws, and I'm not quite sure that they've thought it through either. Particularly once you get into smaller centres, it's a little bit different in the metropolitan areas. There's more avenues to get rid of this because you've got bigger volumes to deal with. But transport quickly becomes a major cost barrier.
And through Madam Chair, I think what we heard was that, as building sites, residential sites getting smaller and smaller, there isn't physically enough room to easily have a bin for different sorts of material. And I think I heard Andrew say that it was at Auckland had been using this system and it's turned to custard and isn't working. So the idea of how is a critically important part of the bylaws implications for people.
That's why I was asking, could there be one recycling bin and one rubbish bin, and then the recycling bin gets sorted when it goes back to the thing? So there'll be cardboard and timber, and we have no market for jib offcuts, do we? Do we jib offcuts
Justin.
So we don't ourselves, but there is a company in Christchurch that does. So that's it'll go to a landscape company, and shredded go onto land. So can I just clarify one? But there is one company in Christchurch, and I think that's what Andrew talked about. The cost to get the waste up to there was $3,500. I think she mentioned. And they will have one bin. They will take everything. They've actually got a sorting line that they'll put it on, and then they've got markets for the individual products. But the issue is the transport distance. So there are markets there. It's just trying to find them all and make it cost effective.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you. So if we made it mandatory for buildings over $500,000 to have the plan in place, how would it be monitored? Would our building inspectors need another hour on top of the job to go around and check that all the recycling was being sorted? Because obviously it's a bylaw, so if they're not doing it right, then we have a right to fine people. But is it going to be feasible to have? Are we going to need extra staff? How's it going to be monitored? And I know mandatory wasn't our preferred option, so it's come out of the blue. But has there been any thought into that?
If mandatory were to become your preferred option, it certainly raises some issues in terms of how you're going to administer it, the staffing required. I wouldn't necessarily assume it would be the building inspectors because it's not technically part of the building consent how they manage their waste on site. There's certain part of the reason that we've had a discretionary provision in the bylaw for a number of years, which we've never applied, comes down to the fact that it possibly takes more resource to administer than we've got available to do the work. And when you throw in the fact that as an intervention it probably isn't going to be effective anyway,
Okay, Lang.
It's a problem, but I think it's a mindset. It's been done for years. We've got, first, when we started building 15 years ago, we burned the stuff. Now it's going in bins. So it's a mindset, and we have to just do it. I worked in Medford earlier this week. Here's a gentleman coming past in one of the bins with a dog, and the dog shit is put in the bin. So the whole bin is basically done. It's a mindset. People have to know and learn what they can do and what they can't. I think, to me, that is the most important thing, what you can do and how you can do it. Because you can't put 5 bins up there. 1 or 2 is maximum. But the trouble is, you get someone coming past and chuck something in. So it's just a mindset for a lot of people.
Thank you.
It's not easy, but it just learn to do it the right way.
Right, moving along, we've got Mayor Brown.
Yeah, thanks. Andrew said it'd been trialled in Auckland and it didn't work. But she hasn't given any evidence as to why it didn't work. She assumed it was because you couldn't fit the skips on the small area. But should we not find out why it didn't work in Auckland? Or even if the fact is true, it didn't work. Can we find out what Auckland is doing? And was it the size of the too many bins on the section because they're too small? What was their issue, and have they solved it, or what have they done to solve it, if anything? And what do they do now? If we could find that, it'd be helpful, I think.
Yep, we can follow through on that. Andrew said it was some information that came across her desk through Master Builders. So we'll try and track it down.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Just a comment on that, because I do know, and I think we all know, that in Auckland they have a lot of inner city builds with, going up rather than out. So it depends on the section side, and if it's a big apartment building that they're building, well, I can understand that if it's on, Newmarket or something. But if it's out and it depends, doesn't it? So that would be good to have that.
They also do
delineated.
have large greenfield
Yes.
subdivisions where you've got many hundreds of sections. Well, I think one of the things they trialled in Auckland was using one of the sections as a kind of a central recycling. And one of the issues was if people were close to it, they used it, but others who were a bit further away would literally drive past it.
Yeah, well, we can't comment on that.
And I don't know.
It sounds like someone's not committed if they're driving right past it. But anyway, it'd be good to have that.
Right. Okay, Phil.
Thank you. Justin, what did you say a trailer load of poly is to dump, for a builder? A trailer load brings it to the recycling depot. What does that cost them? Is that 125 or something like that?
25.
25.
Yep. So that's just the minimum charge here. So generally speaking, they'll come in with a trailer load of polystyrene. So we just charge $25.
Are we in a position to then, I suppose it's maybe out of your bounds, but to get a truckload of poly and take it to Expol separate from your waste that goes to Cape Valley? Is that what happens then?
So we have looked at this for commercial. So there's a few things with it. Basically it needs to be dry, so we need a storage area big enough to take however much we're going to drop off. And then we'd just have to enter into negotiations with Expol, what their cost is, say it's a 40-foot container or something, what the cost is for that, for us to get it back there, and then work out how you charge from that. So you'd probably need some staff to do some visual checks of it before it goes in, because it can't have any, you need to remove like sellotape, has to be dry and clean, things like that. But yeah, we have looked into this.
Yeah, we just need to come up with the numbers that makes the builder go, right, I'm going to collect all that poly up on a trailer, I'm going to take that and recycle it, I'm not going to chuck it in Gary McCormick's bin at $350 an empty. I mean, that even though it's light, it still takes up a heap of space in that bin. So if we can say, this is a much better option for you to do, then I think they'll do the cardboard and that as well. But the poly's that seems to me the real sticking point for us. So, okay, so 25, cool, thanks.
We'll go to Liz and then we better keep back
Yeah.
onto these submissions. We're moving off track.
Sorry, and I just wanted to ask Justin, can you remember what the ratio is of landfill that goes up to Cape Valley for construction waste compared to household waste? It's quite a big difference, isn't it? I can't remember if it's...
We can find that
Yeah, yes.
portion perhaps while you're having a cup of tea or something. We'll find that number.
I think. Right, we'll go on to page 9 and page 10. Richard, you might like to talk about the feedback on the construction site waste here.
Yeah, well, I think I spoke to this earlier. A lot of people favoured mandatory for various reasons that have already been well discussed. We're not convinced that that's the right answer. I think what the mandatory tells you, though, is that is, and I link this to the waste minimisation for events as well, is that the community's mindset is changing. They do think that we should be doing the right things and to minimise waste. But I think when you get in, as we have today, when you start to get into the practicalities and the obstacles and the economics, then you've got to find solutions that are going to work for people who are in the construction industry and running events.
Right, we'll move on to page 11 and 12. Right, 13. And 14. 15. And we'll come to page number 16, and Richard, there's another graph. Would you like? Not a graph, boxes there. You like
So this was the third of the key issues, and that relates to the retrieval of bins and crates in the central business district. We went out with a preferred option of the status quo, and that came through from submitters as their preferred option, but closely followed by a noon collection day. We're still recommending status quo. Be interested to know, particularly from councillors that are well connected with the local business community, what sort of feedback you might have had. I don't have close links to the local business community, although I do. I almost need a second mortgage when I go to the supermarket. So, yeah, interested. We're kind of coming around to the view that we've started a conversation. We can share the feedback with the businesses, but we should leave it as it is.
Before we go to questions, can I ask just one question? The one-way streets in the middle of town, the rubbish bins, are they all on one side or both sides when the trucks go up? Justin, you'd like to?
Yeah, so I think it's the one-way streets that are mainly the issue here, because they all go on one side of the road, so the trucks can empty from the left-hand side, and then essentially the bins are not outside the shops on one side of the road; they're only outside the other, so you almost forget about them, and I think that's where the problems have come in with this one. But
Thank you. First question, Mayor Brown.
I'm on page 10, I'm not sure whether you went past it or not, but feedback on construction site waste management. We got past that or not? Or?
Yeah.
We're on 16.
Right, just have a question on that, on the construction site. So have we done any work on, we know now what it costs for a bin for demolition on a site. There's up to 7 bins at $300, $350. If there was recycling bins there and there's enough room to have them there, what would it cost a builder if he put the stuff in the right bins? Because receiving it at the park would be free, so there wouldn't be a dump fee. It would just be, I assume, getting it there. So there'll still be 7 bin loads, because the waste is the waste. By chopping it up, will it be cheaper for him or her to do that if it's separated? because there's no fees at the Resource Recovery Park, just the cartage. Is that correct?
You would think it would be cheaper, but there's, if you're paying for skips, I guess you've got your transport of those, and not every material would be free. So, likes of untreated timber, if you're on it, there might be a cost to dispose of that. It might be cheaper than landfill costs. So there'd be items like that, your soft plastics from your pink bats, the bags they come in. A lot of that can get shipped up to Blenheim now. There's a future post up there. So soft plastics and a lot of other plastics that are non-recyclable in other ways can go there and be made to post, but there's a cost for transport. So they might be cheaper than landfill, but not free for everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
There may not be skip bins required on the site to take the recycling. It might be the little 240 litre green bins, because there's not a lot of it, like your pink bats. There's probably not a lot of wastage in them. Has there been enough work done on what type of wastage a builder actually produces? Can't do the jib boards, it's got to go into the recycling other rubbish bin. Treated timber, I think you said, has to go into the rubbish bin. I don't know of any building sites that don't have treated timber on them. All your timber needs to be treated, so there would be no recycling. What recycling have they actually got on a site? And I don't know the answer to that.
Right, Liz.
Again, if people had to pull their bins in by 12 o'clock, how's that going to be monitored?
We forgot to go.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, the answer to Nev's.
Oh, I'll turn it. You go on, Neil.
Well, I did have a question, but I never got an answer.
Sorry.
You shut it down.
Sorry.
So you're talking about individual items.
Yeah.
So for an example, the company in Christchurch, they do recycle the pink treated timber, so that's from inside your house. They don't recycle the fully treated timber. They've got metal, they take concrete, which will get crushed. Any metal comes out of the concrete is recyclable. So they're heavy items that will cost a lot going to landfill. And pink vats, they take polystyrene as well. They deal with theirs in a different way to X-Pol. They do take the jib board. So there's quite a lot. They have a huge amount, and they will just take it. And as I say, they put it over their sort line, but it's one company that does it. So there is a lot of what goes in there that can be recycled.
Yep.
Carolyn.
Thank you. Can I go back to the CBD waste in the wheelie bins?
That's what we're on.
I read in the bylaw, and now I cannot find it typically, that you have to have your wheelie bin out by 7:30 and collected by 7:30 p.m, out by 7:30 a.m. and collected by 7:30 p.m. Have I got that correct?
I think it says it needs to be out by 7:30 a.m.
Yes.
and it must be collected during the day of. It must be retrieved during the day of collection. So
yes.
theory up to midnight.
No, I beg your pardon. I meant the council will collect the wheelie bin. The wheelie bin will be collected between 7:30 a.m. and 7:30 p.m. I think I read that. Well, I'm pretty sure I've read that in some of the material.
Yep, Justin's giving me the affirmative in my shell-like. There's actually a correction there that I think in the CBD we actually start the collection at 7, not at 7:30. So we need to correct that.
Yes, and I think in the CBD, to be fair, we have discussed this in a previous iteration of council, and there was endeavours made by the because of the wheelie bins out all day and the unpredictability of the trucks to get them collected earlier in the morning. I think I support, and I've read the submissions, I support the current status quo because most businesses in the CBD want to get their wheelie bins off the street to make their premise look attractive. With regards to other, can I expand the scope a little bit beyond the CBD? With regards to other businesses, they also have the same thing, and they need the wheelie bins on their premises to put their rubbish in on a daily thing. The inconsistency of the delivery pickups of the trucks should be addressed, like that 12-hour scope of picking up, but then mandate the businesses to collect within a certain time frame, I think is unfair. And we need a more permanent time of when the wheelie bins are going to be collected. Like most businesses put them out at night because they think they could be collected at 7:30 in the morning, and then they're not collected till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They go in and out and in and out and in and out and check when the wheelie bins are collected. So I think that needs some oversight and some review, so people have an approximation of when to, because the wheelie bins are scruffy on the streets. I'm referring specifically to Allington because that's where I am a lot. So it would be nice to know, well, the wheelie bins will come and then we'll collect them. Sorry, Hamish, you want to?
No, I'm just wondering whether businesses would be prepared to pay extra to have a more narrow window for collection. Because we get this feedback a lot from just residential customers all over the collection that they would prefer a more precise time, and giving the collection service the freedom to pick it up within a broader time obviously makes it more efficient for them. So do you think there would be some willingness to pay extra to have a narrower time?
I take your point, Hamish, although I don't consider it a rational argument, given we're discussing businesses and given there's a conglomeration and a group of businesses on one site, whereas houses are spaced down a road, and the urgency and the pressure on the wheelie bins is not as generally as significant as it is on the businesses. So I take your point, like pay more, but most businesses actually do. They do have extra bins or whatever. But we cannot put constraints on them to get it in within a certain time frame when we're not prepared to collect it within a certain time frame. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, and that is my point.
Yeah, I understood the point. I was just trying to say whether businesses would be, in your view, prepared to pay a little bit extra to have a narrower time. Do you think?
Well, it shouldn't cost more, should it? The truck should have a certain route, and they should go around that route every day in the same time. So we get to know they're coming there at 4:30 in the afternoon, and they're going to be on, I don't know, Allison Street at 2:30 in the afternoon, or between 2 and 5 or something, not this big 12-hour gap. If residents are also complaining about that, because the rubbish tips over and the rubbish floats around the street, and our town looks scruffy. So that's the other side effect of that.
That's a fair. I'd support that.
Madam Chair, I understood that part of the issue that we have had with the regularity of collections related to fleet issues, that a large truck rolled, then they had to get smaller trucks which have less capacity, and they get extra drivers. But my understanding from conversations with Hernando and Justin is that those issues have largely been worked through. So we may well be trying to fix a problem which has already been resolved.
Okay. Richard.
I just have a comment on that. That problem should be resolved when we redo the contract, because it's a pretty poor excuse. If my tractor breaks down, I just don't say, well, I can't get my crop in time because I've going to get a wee tractor in the shed. I have to alleviate that and suck it up and deal with it. So I think that's not a fair comment to make. The contractors should have to suck that up and get on with it and deal with it. And still, the level of service, we obviously didn't have a level of service quite correct. If they've got a very long period of time to do it, and that becomes a problem, our level of service should change what we expect.
Well, that tender is out now, and that level of service has already been defined for the next period of time as well. So I don't know whether that level of service is the same as the current one or is narrower in time. I don't know, Neil, whether you've got any comment.
Yeah, through the chair, I think if that were required, we'd have to put in the contract document that they are to have a redundancy or a spare truck available in those events. And I mean, there's obviously a cost for that, but I don't think we've specified that. Have we in the contract, Justin or Hernando? Do you know, in terms of backups or trucks in case there's a breakdown?
What's specified in the contract that they have to collect the rubbish from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. and then they can plan their route based on that span of time. And if there will be accidents, then they will have backups. But that will also cause maybe an hour delay, 2 hours delay for the backup to pick up where the original truck is picking up. So there will be delays.
Yes, so in the tender evaluation, if a contractor does in the information provide they have a neighbouring contract or they have trucks available, we would obviously score that higher than ones that don't show proof or evidence of having a fleet backup available.
Thank you. Phil?
Okay, have we had a lot of complaints from the businesses affected by the rubbish bins being left out? I mean, you know, the ones over the road where all the bins go. Have we had a lot of complaints from them?
Justin, Roger.
Not a heap of complaints, but regular. So, yeah, it's just regular, not a huge amount.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, moving along, page 17, 18, 19, and 20. 21, 22, 23.
Sorry, just a question on
yes.
page 21.
Yes.
Phil Walton's comment there, would that be correct? Regarding, have you got a pit for your rubbish? I don't know if you read it.
I'd like to think that if someone came in today with that question, they would not get that response. But I can't speculate on the accuracy of Mr. Walton's submission. I take them all at face value.
Right, Richard.
Number 23, the page 23, the lids at rural transfer stations are locked open for various reasons. I think we've seen a picture of how wide they're locked open, and I'm interested to understand how that relates to rural areas. People stockpile their bottles and their cans and their cardboard, and you know, we have boxes on our farm. We stockpile them because obviously we don't take every bottle. We can't walk to our bin. We have to drive to the local recycling station. So we take it down in a tractor and we can tip the bin with all its correct things in. But now someone has to stand there and actually physically feed each bottle into the container, which is quite ridiculous is the word I'd use. When rural ratepayers do pay at UAGC, they do pay rates for the right to do it all. But just as a management thing, it's a bit like asking a truck to pull up and feed a bottle into the truck, the rubbish truck. We don't do that. We try and do efficient, so it's pretty inefficient. I know there's reasons for it, but it's pretty inefficient for rural people.
Carolyn.
Thank you, Lynette, for sending this photograph. It's interesting to hear the comment on compaction. Do not sleep in the recycling bins. It may end in a nightmare involving a compactor truck. Is that facetious? Or? Yeah. Don't do it.
No, unfortunately, that's not facetious.
And just so to... Oh, beg your pardon. I thought it was this.
Yeah, sorry, no, that's not facetious. That has happened in the past. People have turned up in rubbish.
No, I'm not commenting on people have. I heard that earlier from somebody, but what I meant was that it might end in a nightmare involving a compactor truck.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Perhaps we should be more specific. They might say they're not clear what that means. Perhaps it might end up in you being squashed.
Yeah, lifted, emptied into a truck.
The other point, and that's why I bring that up, my other point is contributor 2163, just to fall into our arms with regards to the timing of 8:30 to 6 p.m. I understand Neil McCann's comment with regards to emergencies, to get a flat tyre or truck breaks down or something, but I think hopefully emergencies are not predictable events and that we do have more of and if we can let people know, then that would minimise the rubbish floating around the street and minimise the inconvenience to the ratepayer.
And I think they generally try and do that. What my point earlier was that if we increase the level of service in the contract, if we require a narrow band of time for this thing to happen, it will cost the contractor more. If they have the flexibility to pick up all that rubbish within a set period of time, they will be geared to do that. If we want a narrower period of time, we will have to pay more. And that was really my point around the discussion that was focused at that point on businesses wanting a narrower time frame. If anyone wants a narrower time frame, the cost of the contract will increase. It's simply got to be true given the complexity of picking up an entire area's rubbish.
Can I just make a point on before I go to Neil on these bins? That's the Willoughby site. I took these last night, and the comment I was going to ask whether the lid could have an extended opening about a beer box or a bin full, so people could tip the rubbish into that, because if you leave these bins open, then all west wind blows it right across the road into the house across the road. We've had that issue years ago with rubbish, but we still need probably a wider opening, but it's bigger than what we've got here. That's why I decided to take these photos.
Yeah, so the reason that they are that much is really to do with the sorting facilities don't like things much bigger than a 4 litre container, and it has stopped. So, as you say, a bag of something needs to be emptied in, but generally speaking, if you can open the lid right up, you get a bag of whatever in there. So since we've started doing this, contamination rates have come right down from our drop-off sites. We get rubbish fly tipping beside the bins, and so forwarded some images to Linda, who's done a story in the past on it, of appliances, bags of rubbish, and even bags of recycling. But a black bag of recycling is still a bag of rubbish when it gets to a sorting facility. So, yeah, although it's inconvenient for some, it's really helped our contamination rates at the end.
Thank you. We'll go to Mayor Brown.
Yeah, that was my question. Partly answered it. That what was the percentage of contamination dropped by putting the limit on? Do you know what that percentage was? Or?
No, we're not getting. I've kind of asked for them to not send contamination rates just because of the way the way they work out that number. But from the amount of material that is now left beside bins as opposed to what we didn't see in the past, and feedback. So we have our contractors have a person who'll do a drive round all of these sites before the truck arrives, and anything they can pull out, they'll pull out. So that amount of material has gone up, which is sitting beside the bins.
Yeah. To add to that, the amount of materials that are dumped outside the recycle bin has increased by 23%, which means that 23% is supposed to be dumped inside the recycle bins. They are now dropping it outside the recycle bins, which also reduces the amount of contamination by at least 23%.
You solve one problem, it causes another.
It's easier to collect the rubbish outside the bins than to dispose the whole thing as a recycled because we have to dump everything as a rubbish if it's already contaminated.
Okay. Lane.
Yes, sorry, I missed this before. The routes they drive, the trucks, is the same time, the same day, every time. So if you start 7:30, it starts on the same, every day, the same place.
So normally when the contractor will have names of all streets, and then they will do a plan of how they collect each street. And so they will definitely have exactly the same route every week
Every time.
at the same time.
Yes.
Unless there will be an accident or traffic.
So there should be no trouble for people not having it there on time.
Yep.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no more questions. Well, that will end the session and then we've got a break at the moment for 15 minutes for morning tea, and we'll come back and we'll do our deliberations on all these submissions. And thank you, everybody and staff. I'd just like to welcome back everybody again, and this part of the session is the decision-making part. So, right, and we'll, everyone on your screens, you'll have the solid waste bylaw deliberations presentation, and we'll move through that, and Richard will guide us through here, and we'll take questions after each section of it. Right, Richard, the floor's all yours.
So, effectively what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of the issues to be decided. There'll be a recommendation presented. It'll be, officers will explain the reasoning behind the recommendation, then there'll be an opportunity for questions, and then you'll debate, and then you'll decide, and then we'll move on to the next issue. We are moving towards formal adoption. We're still, fingers crossed, that we'll get there on the 30th of October.
Here's a quick question.
Just got a question. It's around demolition of a house or a building that we have in the district. Is that covered in this bylaw?
The part that talks about construction site waste minimisation plans could also talk about construction and demolition waste, but difficulty with demolition is that demolition no longer requires a building consent. So it creates an immediate problem of, if we wanted to encourage people to do the right thing, how do we know that they're doing a demolition? It's an administrative trigger problem rather than...
Because we demolish a few buildings, council does, and does everything that's inside them get recycled? We don't, well, I don't know. They have a lot of recyclable stuff in them. Some are old and they've nice wood in them. Does it get recycled? Don't know. So when did you not have to get a consent to demolish a building? When did that come in?
I couldn't tell you the date off the top of my head. I know that Michael Wong probably could, but it's been a wee while now.
Okay. Thanks.
Right, moving on. Richard.
Just want to talk a little bit about this. This is the VADE model, which is a very commonly used model. You may have even seen it before as an approach to regulatory compliance. And it gets its name because it looks at the behaviour and how the regulatory system approaches it. So you've got voluntary, assisted, directed and enforced at the top of the pyramid. And I think the relevance to our conversation is that most regulatory compliance is working in that bottom two parts of the pyramid. Most people want to do the right thing, and either it's just difficult or they don't have the awareness. And so you only get to the sharp end of the regulatory when you're dealing with people who either have a propensity for non-compliance or they're seriously non-compliant. And most of our bylaw and our thinking is focused around making it easy for people to comply and assisting people to comply. Just wanted that in there as a bit of context for what follows. So this is the data on event waste management minimisation plan. 60% support, 18% showed support for the status quo, and the issue that we've actually uncovered during the discussion is around how we define an event. And I did find some material on Council's website which talks about a range of trigger factors, such as includes 150 people at the event, but it also talks about road closures, it talks about amusement devices and inflatables which have safety issues, talked about having food at an event. There's about 7 or 8 different factors, so we can bring that back in some form of advice around the definition of event within the bylaw. Having been through the submissions, we had this 3-part recommendation. We still think that the bylaw should be amended to require all events on council-owned or managed land to have a waste management minimisation plan. Obviously, you'd need to be comfortable with the definition of events sitting alongside that. And 2, direct officers to make compliance as easy as practicable, including the use of templates. And 3, continue to offer education and information to event organisers, including Eco-Educate Waste Management Service. So that recommendation is consistent with the proposal that we went out to consult on. It's consistent with the public response.
Thank you. Got a question or comments from Liz?
Yeah, I was just going to say that number 2, making it as easy as possible is quite key, because I know just from filling in event application forms, they are quite long and there's a lot of information required, and I think we just need to make this as easy as possible. And I think also just to have that definition of event, and I see in there you've got managed land, so that does include reserve boards as well. So maybe when the licence to occupy with the rugby club or the netball club or whatever is signed up or done through the reserve boards, that they are also given just the template of the plan in case they do have an event, and maybe sort of a bit of communication on when they would need to fill that out, because I can just see it not happening, or I don't know.
My conversation with Sarah was that the reserve boards are still king in terms of the areas that they manage, but most of them are actually happy to refer people to our process and encourage them to work with our staff. So I think it's working quite well, but we're not proposing to undermine the authority of the reserve boards.
For a go to Neil, I think reserve boards, and all I know at Require, they do talk to staff when they're having events, and they go through a plan. So that is already in place, and I'll go to Mayor Brown.
It just depends whether they like doing the plan or not, that's the thing. But just the wording around all events on council owned, when you define events, that's not going to be accurate, because it's going to exempt some events because they're the wrong size, not the right size or whatever. So it's sort of contradictory, I see, if you use the words all events, but the definition will help it.
So do you think if we said amend the bylaw to require events on council owned or managed land, I haven't got we're still sort of asking questions rather than debating, but the removal of the word all plus the definition would probably satisfy the point you're making in terms of it appears contradictory. It would remove that appearance.
Make the definition of events, yeah, that'd be good.
I think the word all's good, right, Richard?
I would exclude all reserve board land because the reserve boards are in control of it, and it's there, and they're trying to make events to the community as cheap and as easy as possible. They are at the end responsible for any rubbish on that land, so they will have to deal with the consequences, or in the recycling. That'll be their community's aspirations with those events. This is overreach for us to reach into those community events and tell them they have to do something. This is not an option. This is mandatory. And it just adds more bureaucracy and more. I think some of the submitters talked about that, more bureaucracy. Sure, in the council, if someone's having a street parade, or if it's in the domain, that's a different place and a different event to one on reserve board land. So I would like to see reserve board land completely exempt from it, because we have reserve boards who monitor it, manage it, look after it.
All right, Phil.
Thank you. Do we have staff check events now afterwards to make sure that waste minimisation was adhered to? I know that at the market day and things like that, there were staff have been wandering around there and checking up on things.
Yeah, I'm just discussing it with Hernando. We both think that there's some follow through from our economic development partner, our event organiser, to ensure that there is compliance with those sorts of issues. And you've just reminded me that part of the reason that I think reserve boards are quite happy to refer people through our process is that while some of the things, having an event on reserve board land is perfectly within the scope of the reserve board to approve, but if there's amusement devices, if there's inflatables, if there's a stage of more than 100 square metres, then it's not just compliance with our bylaw, it's also compliance with building code or other regulations. So there are aspects, and if you've got people selling food, then you've got compliance with Food Act and other regulations. So,
as a part of your easy and practical template, do you see there being mandatory sections around recycling? The point I'm getting to is that I want to get rid of the red tape, and I would have no events and a fine afterwards if there's rubbish, and a big push on education using the wonderful facilities that we have, Eco-Educate, etc. I just think we need to get rid of this. There was a question in there at the start. Yeah, so the easy and practical template, will that have a section saying you must recycle?
I imagine it'll have a section that says, please tell us how you plan to manage your waste.
Yeah. Which is a public expectation these days anyway.
Any more questions or anyone? Oh, no.
Just a clarification on point 3. I'm aware that we have had about 8 to 10 events where Eco-Educate have provided their services. They charge $1,200 a day, and we pay for that from our waste levy money that comes back for waste management and minimisation activities. So it's no extra cost. It actually comes through from our revenue we get back from the levy.
Sorry, Neil, was that if Carol Johns was doing something then?
If it's on our land?
Yeah.
And they are offered the opportunity, and it's just up to them to accept it, and then we do engage Eco-Educate to assist. I don't think Carol Johns has taken up the offer. No.
And we pay for that?
We pay for that through that levy money. Yeah.
Liz?
Thanks. Just going back to the managed land or the reserve boards, I think Richard's got a point, but I think that once we get that definition of events and the larger scale with the bouncy castles or whatever, it's not a club day or a rugby game or a big sort of squash tournament, then I think it should sort of streamline itself. It wouldn't be for every event. I'm thinking more of require having their fireworks night, so they would, that's an event that they would have lodged with through council, and so it would make sense for them to have a waste management plan or minimisation plan there. But yeah, I think you could still keep that managed land in there. It would just be the definition of the event being in there so that it wasn't for sort of smaller stuff where, yeah, if that makes sense.
I think that word "all" taken out says a lot, doesn't it, right, Richard?
In response to that, probably to clarify, I'm not saying the people can't say no, we won't do it. They may choose to adopt it at every event, but it gives them the choice to say, yes, this event, we want the help of the council with this. Anybody who comes to an event, you have to, you don't have to. It gives them the choice. Whereas as soon as you take the choice away, unintended consequences can happen. And so all the reserves sit in the same place. And if they choose to have the mandatory, bylaw enacted on that event, that's their choice. But if they choose not to, well, it's their choice too. That's what I'm giving up. I'm giving the reserve boards the overall governance of it rather than us dictating.
Right, Mayor Brown.
Suppose a scenario that use require, there's a rugby game on there and it's a good game if people want to see the outcome and 1,000 people turn up. Is that an event on a reserve?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think we're back to the definition of an event.
Yeah.
And it's clear we're going to have to take some care and time to develop that definition. But I think for councillors' comfort, you are going to approve that definition when it comes back to you in the bylaw. So you should take comfort that you will get the event definition that satisfies your view of it. And again, where there's multiple views, the will of the majority will prevail, and that'll be the definition, and that'll be what everyone will have to do.
Yeah, the key will be the definition of event.
Absolutely.
Is that likely to get to us? When is that likely to come to us? At the council meeting when we adopt, or before?
Likely to come to you at the council meeting when you adopt. I would have thought alongside every other issue or change that you wish to make through this review.
And if we've got a sticking point with the reserve boards, can that come back whether they're in or out, mandatory or not?
I think what will become clear is you'll have this substantive debate when you see the definition, and you'll either amend it or adopt it as proposed to you to take into account the issues that are important to you and the community.
Okay, Russell.
Thank you. And just leading on from that, for those on the Tynwald Reserve Board, there's a lot of events happen on your land with the various organisations that are in their open days regularly and various things. So there will need to be some very clear, otherwise it's going to become a very onerous task for that reserve board. For every time there's the railway have an open day or the fire brigade have an open, it's going to be an endless procession of work to be done.
Thank you. Right, there's no more questions. Richard, are you happy with what we're putting? Waiting for a motion. Right, what are we?
Yes, Madam Chair, this is a formal hearing.
Sorry, yeah.
Having considered the submissions and the deliberations, so you are certainly able to resolve something.
Anyone? Liz?
I'll move that recommendation with the amendment of number 1 saying amend the bylaw to require events, and like to see the definition of the event.
Just number 1, or you're going to put 2? All of them, thank you. Have we got a seconder? Russell?
Thank you. Yes, and with that definition, and I think alongside the definition, there may need to be some exclusions that we will discuss, but we'll do that at the time. Yeah.
Thank you. Right, all those in favour? So, against? We've got one. Do you want it recorded or not? Or yeah. Thank you. Rightio, moving on.
We've talked a little bit about this. We had a lot of people in favour of a mandatory construction site waste management minimisation plan, but for reasons that have been well traversed already today, that's not what we're recommending. So we're recommending that the bylaw be amended to remove the clauses requiring construction site waste management and minimisation plans, and second, that you direct officers to explore education and information options to support the building sector, including what can be recycled and where recycled building materials can be sent.
Right. Questions, Russell?
Is it possible, and I don't know the wording, to have in here a timing so that if in 18 months' time habits haven't changed and the voluntary side of it's not working through education and things, then we can review this?
Would you like to, comments to that or no?
It's perfectly possible if you wanted to review, once we've put something in place and you asked that the effectiveness of those measures be reviewed in 18 months or 2 years' time or whatever, perfectly straightforward to do. I know that right now there's a huge amount of pressure on Hernando and Justin and the team because they're working through the tender process, which is a big important decision. So I think you need to have if you're going to have a recommendation, I'd say 18 months or 2 years from the delivery of education and information initiatives.
Thank you. Mayor Brown?
Yeah, I'm not convinced that it won't work. I haven't been convinced that it won't work. I've asked for information on why Auckland didn't work and what they do now. So I don't think I can say we're not going to do it until perhaps there's a better way of doing it. If what we propose is not right, there might be a halfway point, or what is Auckland doing now, or other councils, are they mandating anything for their building sites? I just don't feel like enough information to make that decision just yet.
Thank you. Carolyn?
Thank you. I support the Mayor's position. We heard from Andrea this morning a great submission mentioning three things: the length of the plan, which is I think 7 pages mainly of tick boxes, the cost of having multiple bins, but there was uncertain clarity around the number of bins required, maximum 7, but I got the vibe there was 3 or 4, so the cost of that, and the section sizes. Now, we heard that Auckland had a failed trial, and we don't, as the Mayor said, we don't know why that is. It would have had a failed trial in the CBD, because there's no room in the Auckland CBD, so we're not entirely sure. I don't know, I think the whole world understands the importance of recycling, so I don't, because presumably the builders also recycle their stuff at home, so they understand the importance of recycling. So I don't think it's all about the education. I think they are, most of us grew up and are educated enough to know that you recycle. So I'm not sure that that's a reason why there's non-compliance. I think the non-compliance, and I don't know, perhaps, I think Andrea said this morning, it's an inconvenience, but of course it's an inconvenience, but we all live in a society together and we've all got to look after our rubbish. So I would like to understand the issues behind it more, because I don't accept inconvenience as a rationale for not dealing with the waste in an appropriate fashion. If those other things are indeed a bigger deal than we sort of got the vibe, then let's find out about that and get an answer to that. That would be my position.
Okay. Any other Richard?
I support the officer's recommendation. I think that time will sort this out. And if you put a bylaw in, you can put perverse outcomes in, which means that and I would question a lot of the submitters, people that are in the practice and actually doing it, have to actually practically do it. People who are looking from outside, and I perhaps alluded to the greenwashing or the green ideals, are great until you actually have to do it. You can, what's the saying? You can only be in the green if you're in the black or something. In other words, if you can make money, you can be green. If you don't make money, you can't. So I'm just concerned that we just push another cost onto the construction industry, which doesn't help houses being built or whatever. We actually heard that Kahangaroa send theirs to Christchurch to be recycled. Well, that's a really good, environmental outcome, trucking it to Christchurch. And what have they done in the home building scene? Cut a whole lot back. So is that a symptom of what happens when you get too green?
Phil?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with the officer's recommendation as well. I think that there are plenty in the building industry who are trying hard now, and I think going forward, more and more clients will expect their builder to be doing more recycling work. And I've already heard of one local guy who does a lot already, and that's just from street talk. So, yep, I support.
Tony?
I think I'm going to GSI also support the recommendation. We need to support efforts to allow the building trade to efficiently and effectively, I suppose, recycle as much rubbish as possible. So definitely support the recommendation.
Right, Russell?
Thank you. I would support the recommendation if we had a review in 2 years' time of the effectiveness of this.
Would you like to move?
I'm just
There's no
making
more.
my statement at this stage, and if no one else is...
There's no more questions.
Just a question, when is the bylaw due to be reviewed again? Is it 3 years or a 5-year review?
Bylaws are typically reviewed at 5 or 10 year intervals.
Okay.
But what you're talking about here is a specific operational feature of the bylaw. So I'd have no trouble with a shorter time frame on that.
Yeah, I'd be happy with a 2-year review on this part.
And I'm the same.
Would someone like to move?
I'm happy to move 1 and 2, but add that this be reviewed in 2 years' time from when it comes into effect.
Oh, sorry, Neil.
Just a clarification, you want to review the whole bylaw in 2 years or just this one piece?
Just this one piece.
Right. Russell's moved. Have we got a seconder? Liz, are you? Oh, you're happy to second that? Right. All in favour? Please say aye. Right. Anyone against? Carolyn.
I'd like more information as to why that failed at all.
Right, I think we might be able to get that anyway. Yeah, thank you. No discussion. Right, we shall move on to the next issue 3, the bin retrieval. Richard.
So you've seen this information in a bar graph. So here we have the round version, and but the results are still the same. Slight preference for status quo, which was council's preferred option, closely followed by noon. And the officer's advice / recommendation is to retain the status quo in the bylaw. Use this opportunity to educate and inform CBD businesses of the benefits of timely retrieval. And 3, inform those businesses that council's preference is that they continue to self-manage compliance.
Right,
Just a quick question. Do Eco Educate go around and check the yellow bins like they do residential bins in the CBD? They do that as well?
Yep, they not as regularly. They'll do the whole CBD. in one hit rather than individual businesses.
Oh, okay, yep. So they're kind of monitoring it anyway and can pop in and see businesses and have a chat to them if need be. Do they go as far as that, or they just...
Yeah, they could do if it's to do with recycling contamination, yeah.
Yep.
But that wouldn't cover what this one's talking about.
Thanks, Russell.
Thank you. Is the CBD still on 2 collections a week for rubbish and recycling?
Yes.
Phil?
Thank you. Point 2, that's if you get a complaint about a bin being left there still at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, it's getting a bit manky, then you will tell that business that owns the bin the benefits of timely retrieval. That's what that relates to. That business is actually told that this should be in a timely manner. Is that what currently happens?
Yeah. What I was imagining that too would mean is that as the consequence of this consultation, we'd obviously go back to submitters and tell them what the outcome was. We'd also, in our next regular communication to CBD businesses, talk about the consultation issues that came up, what council's decision was, and why it's a good thing to get your bins in because it can avoid issues for your neighbouring businesses. And then when we do have issues come up, there'll be some kind of follow through.
Reminder, yeah. I fully recommend. Thank you.
Richard?
I support the status quo, but I do find it ironic that we're re-tendering it out, and that seems to be the limiting factor of when they're picked up, because obviously to tell the contractor to pick them up earlier costs more money. Therefore, we're leaving the contractor to pick it up later, but then we're telling the businesses to bring them in earlier. So we have 2 different sort of yin and yang sort of thing a bit. So, you know, I would find it very hard to tell businesses to bring them in earlier when the contractor can leave them out as late as, till 7 o'clock at night. So, and the other thing I'd like to just draw attention to I know it's a small one, but it is the rural transfer station bins being fully opened. I'm not asking for them to be fully opened. We're asking them to be open a little bit more so that you can actually, because when you're putting in stuff, it's a bit like feeding one bottle at a time. People have put bits of tin and slid them down the tin to try and get in. There's all sorts of things happening to try and make it practical. So if we could get a little bit more width, I understand the waste, and that could be some of the waste is left beside it because people get there and think, I'll just drop it there rather than feed it in. So
We've got another slide coming that would be an opportunity to debate that.
Okay. Meg Brown?
And we offer the service of 2 bins collections a week in the CBD. Is there any information on how full those bins are, and do they need today 2 collections a week with other services that are offered? Have we asked those questions, or do we just keep delivering what we've always delivered?
Justin?
No, as long as I've been here, we've always had, the CBD's had 2 collections a week, and it's part of the contract, so that's what happens. The only change that has been is they've gone from 7:30 a.m. collection to a 7 a.m. collection, and one thing to note is the CBD gets collected first in the mornings of their collection days. The reason for that is obviously you've got the trucks and the bins, so they do actually get, that is part of the contract, to collect the CBD early to avoid traffic and things like that.
Yeah. Have we asked the question, do they still require 2 services a week? That should we?
Right.
I'm not saying we take it away, but just confirm that they still do need that.
Tony?
Obviously, it's a couple of years since I've been in retail, but I would suggest that the 2 collections a week would be advisable, particularly if you look at the fashion industry where they get deliveries for a whole season in the space of 2 or 3 months. So they would definitely fill 2 bins a week, going by past experience anyway.
Carolyn?
I think when I remember discussing this previously and we got them to put the bins out early and would pick them up early, that we talked about that. And I think we did mention as councillors, would it be more convenient, you know, can people choose? And I think some people don't need 2 bins a week and some people do. And I think the feedback was that the contractor, it would be economies of scale. Have I got that correct? People could choose whether they wanted 1 or 2 delivery collections a week.
Reckon when we prepared the original contract dictates that it be collected 2 times a week. So we cannot actually go away from that because it's a contract requirement. With the new contract, we can probably negotiate with the whoever will win the contract if we have enough evidence that the businesses would only need 1 pickup per week. But we have to do that work and talk to each and every business if they actually need 1 or 2. And then it's quite timely that we are negotiating the new contract and we can make amendments.
Yeah, thank you. No, that wasn't my point, and I appreciate that. It was more that it was economies of scale for the contract, like it wasn't going to cost a lot more. If they had to go down 2 weeks for 10 people, 2 times a week for 10 people, they may as well go down 2 weeks for 20 businesses.
Yeah, it's actually dictated on them by the contract requirements.
Russell?
I think for simplicity, having people opting in and opting out would be
That's right.
awkward to manage, and that'd be no different than people saying, well, I don't need my rubbish collected at my gate every week, so I want to opt out here and then and not pay so much. So I think
That's
that
right.
it's one of those services you're either all in or all out.
That was what
Absolutely. Just back to Richard's point about the rural bins, is it possible to raise the lid on those?
We will look into that recommendation.
It doesn't have to go through a motion, you'll look at doing
Yeah,
that.
we will look into
Coming
that.
up.
There was a slide coming up.
Thank you. Right. Phil?
Yeah, on the back of Richard's first question, do we actually have to tell the contractor to pick up the CBD rubbish early? Because to me, it's just a no-brainer. There's no traffic there, so they can just pull into the park and do their thing without having to go around park cars. So that would be just part of their logistics, wouldn't it?
Most contractors would prefer to pick it up before 7 o'clock.
Yes.
Carolyn?
just to follow on from Phil's comment, yes, that's what I said. We had that discussion last time when we looked at the bylaw that they were going to be collected up early in the CBD, so the CBD is tidy for retailing and activity on that day of bin collection. So they should, retailers are in their interest to collect the bins, and I think most do, but clearly the opposite side of the street scenario you highlighted in the report, and it just means that somebody on the other side of the street has to go across and say, here's your bin. It takes 2 seconds, I would think.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll go to Russell.
Happy to move. 1, 2 and 3.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Carolyn is going to second that. Right. All in favour? Please say aye. Those against? Nobody. Thank you. No discussion? Right. We shall move along to other changes to the bylaw.
The first recommendation here relates to the food organic, green organic collection conditions of service, and some people had concerns about how long the bin would be out, odour, etc. We're in, as you already know, we're in a process of tendering our solid waste management contract. Our recommendation is that in responding to submitters, we note their feedback, that this will help to inform our discussions with the preferred contractor as we negotiate the contract. But obviously there are constraints because if you want a more fixed service around the timing, then it does go to the size of the fleet and the cost of the service. So wanted to give people, paint a picture of what gets balanced up in these decisions and some assurance that we're aware of the issue and we'll take it into account. And the second one on this slide had some feedback from people who don't like the 3 strikes rule. it would appear from their feedback that they've been on the sharp end of the 3 strikes rule, and it's because they've done things that the 3 strikes rule is there to address. We do want to add, however, that, and I didn't understand this at the time we launched the consultation, but we also do have a 1 strike rule. If we find a bin where a yellow bin has simply been used as a red bin, it's thrown everything in without any effort whatsoever, blatant non-compliance, then we will remove that bin. So in the interest of transparency, we think that should be stated in the bylaw as well.
Got a question from Carolyn.
Thank you. With regards to the FOGO collection, if a lot of people, and you alluded to it with the wheelie bins smelling after a period of time in the sun and that, a lot of people will use bin liners in that organic food, organic green waste, organic bin because they don't want it to smell, because especially a lot of businesses keep their wheelie bins indoors. Otherwise people walking, revellers on a Friday night, tip their pizza boxes into them. So we'd have to sort of deal with that presumably in the bylaw to make sure if they're going to be tipped out by a truck that those bins, those bags are compostable or whatever. What's our plans to deal with that?
I don't know what your plan is to deal with that. Justin or Hernando may know.
Yeah, well, excellent. I'm referring to the whole panel as a whole, Richard, not just yourself. Thank you.
Justin.
So MFE have said that you're not to use compostable liners. So what you put in there is food organics and your garden organics, and that's all. So we won't have the issue of liners.
So what did you? I didn't catch you. What did you say? No compostable liners.
No.
Why not? Are they not genuinely compostable, or why not compostable liners?
Depends on which one you're talking about. So there's so many different brands made of different things, so that's why.
So
For
ease
blanket.
of implementation.
Yep.
So people will have to wash their wheelie bins. So there needs to be some consideration as to how they're going to wash their wheelie bins if they're in the CBD, because they'll wash them presumably on the streets or out the back. Or
So at the moment, CBD is not included in the FOGO collection.
Okay. So they're not even getting the food. People aren't getting wheelie bins. Thank you.
Right. Any more questions on these changes to the bylaw? Richard.
You asked about the timing of pickup of the bins. I would have thought you wouldn't change it to the timing of normal pickup of rubbish, because otherwise you could put a huge amount of cost into doubling up your trucks. And I think other cities do, and they don't have it at different times. They just do it in the same route.
Through the chair, I think we're just referring to the businesses in the CBD. Businesses outside the CBD will have to be collected together with the residential. So they are 2 different sites.
Right, we'll carry on to the next slide for the more changes.
You happy with those recommendations?
I'm happy to move.
Are you happy? Thank you, Russell. Seconder.
I'll second.
Thank you, Liz. All in favour? You say aye. Those against?
Next one's more of a communication one. We did have some people, including I think the gentleman who was told that he could dig a hole. And they were concerned about our approach, and I think in some cases it was just a matter that they weren't aware of the range of drop-off facilities and services that were available for people who didn't have a curbside collection. Clause 8.7.5.4 is the clause that enables us to ping somebody under the bylaw if they have put waste into a bin that's already over full. And we had a mix of responses on that. Our recommendation is actually to delete clause 8.7.5.4. We think that we'll get a bit further by with education and promoting the use of Snap, Send, Solve and submitters suggested QR codes was a good way of helping to enable that. The trick with any littering offence isn't whether you've got something in your bylaw, because the Litter Act provides for infringement notices for littering. It's always going to be a matter of, have you got evidence that connects that person to that piece of litter? So I don't think we lose anything by deleting the clause, and I think it actually focuses us on encouraging people to do the right thing. So I think it's smarter in terms of that VADE model that I talked about earlier too.
Russell.
Thank you. With your QR codes, so are you talking like at these recycling centres, that bin might have a QR thing on it you can scan if you get there and find the bin's full and you can't put your rubbish in, because that sometimes is an issue, and it's then easy for the contractor to find out it's full.
I'm getting nods from both my left and right, yes.
And just a question, would you also have a phone number on there, because
Yes.
Snapsend Solve doesn't get picked up during the weekend, which, does it? No.
I think it'd be a matter of sitting down with Dan and the team and working out what kind of messaging is going to be most effective for the contractor and for our customers.
I'll just make a comment. I noticed what photos I took here of the Willoughby site. There's no phone number or a notice about Snapsend and Solve there. There's nothing down there, and because I know in the past people have asked who they contact when those bins are full, so that's why I carefully looked around and couldn't see anything, and it would be helpful to have, because a lot of people don't have QR codes on their phones, but if there's a phone number they can leave a message or something, that would be handy. Right, Phil.
I'm happy to move both of those.
Okay, thank you. All those in favour, please Sarah. Right. All against? No, they're all in favour. No discussion. Right, we'll move on.
The first one of these was we had some people expressing support for waste to energy systems, and there's some officer comment. We've got a pretty substantial commitment to a very high quality facility at Cape Valley. That's got another 15 years to run on its current consent. And there was some really useful information from the staff at Cape Valley to help fashion a response there. So just recommending we note those comments and respond in terms of what we've got in the feedback of summary. And had a suggestion about information in easy read plain language, and again note and respond in terms of the officer feedback is the only recommendation there. The one in the middle, however, has sparked more feedback, and so our recommendation there probably is not sufficient, or may not be sufficient depending on the mood of the room. What's clear is that there's a trade-off if you enable the bins to be more fully open. There's a contamination risk trade-off. I have established my non-practical person credentials many times in this chamber, but it would seem to me that maybe a good way to progress this would be for Justin and Hernando or someone from the team to meet on site with interested councillors and consider what solutions there might be. Justin's explained to me he thinks he can get a bag of recyclables into one of those bins without having to feed them in one at a time. So I don't use such a bin, I don't know myself, but maybe from there you could work out between you what you think a practical solution is going forward, and then there are 40 of these bins around the district, so it might be that you decide that 200 isn't enough, but 300 might be enough, and they're still manageable in terms of the contamination risk, and then trial it, and then if it works, roll it out further. Just a thought.
Thank you. Right, Mayor Brown's got a
A
question.
couple of points. Yeah, the real drop-off bins. Someone might like to do a YouTube video of just emptying it in to show how possible it is, and then people can see how to do it for education. Just support for waste to energy systems, and I'm thinking of the Donaldson one just out of town. Do we support that or do we not? I'd say yes, we would support it. The fact that it burns appropriate material. He has trouble getting it fully consented the way he would like. So I think in an instance like that, yes, we should support your views.
Rob.
Thank you. Justin, I was just wondering, when you had the locked open scenario, obviously to reduce contamination, did you go in at just the one level, or did you trial different widths to see which reduced the contamination the best?
No, we've just tried the one at the moment. That's the bars come from the manufacturer and they were designed that size. So yeah, we haven't tried any other openings.
Thank you.
Right, Tony.
Thank you. Just to carry on from Neil's comments, I think in time we probably should consider the waste to energy system, whether it's Greg Donaldson or someone else's. Like we hear this morning, the cost of carting stuff to different towns around the South Island to get rid of our stuff. Then what does happen to it? And waste to energy is being used in different countries around the world. It's fairly efficient in the way it burns stuff these days. Some of our green supporters may not be keen on it, but I think in time it's probably something that we may have to consider, but obviously not today because it wasn't part of the spec, but in time it may be something that we should be considering.
Hamish.
Just in terms of waste to energy, you can make a very strong argument that Cape Valley is already utilising waste to energy mentality. It's collecting the methane gas. It's using that methane gas to drive electricity generation. The only limitation to that energy generation is the size of the lines company lines that lead away from the facility, and from time to time I understand they have to burn off some of that excess gas. So when we talk about waste to energy, I think you should have clearly in your mind that Cape Valley is in part already doing that, and given the shareholding and the contracts we have with Cape Valley and the way in which our waste heads there, I think this council is already in waste to energy in one form or another. Generally speaking, the waste to energy comments involve examples of very big plants that require vast quantities of waste in order to have any hope of being economically viable, and usually the cases that come across my desk are examples based on European experiences where the population is vastly greater than ours, and the amount of waste going through them is dramatic, and it has some sort of economic viability because of that volume of waste. So these are, and I'm sure there'll be technologies that will continue to develop, and there are an idea that we must continue to keep abreast of, but it is worth noting that Cape Valley is already using waste to generate energy. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Phil.
Yeah, with what Hamish was saying, I agree, but I also think that going forward, it's something that we should dig a bit deeper into and look at as it evolves. And yeah, as you say, the Scandinavian countries that are doing it, they do get burnables from Europe, so it is a revenue stream in that way, and then they're producing electricity for a neighbouring town as well. So it ever evolving, and we should keep a play with it as it evolves.
There's one more thing. Sorry, Madam Chair, I also meant to say that those examples that have come across our desk, or my desk, or that I read about, generally involve quite some community response to these significant plants, and everyone likes the idea, nobody wants them in their district or in their neighbourhood or in their paddock on the edge of their town. And the example that I'm most recently thinking of is the one in Waimate, which is causing immense debate in that community about that facility. So the waste to energy systems are not without community perspective and political peril, and need a fair bit of care as we continue to think about managing the waste stream.
Thank you, Richard.
It's further to the Chief Executive's comment. Kate Valley would like to see more organic waste, which is ironically which we're going to take out of the waste stream, because that actually adds, it's some of the best place for it to go to be turned into methane, and that organic waste disappears. So the government rules from our point of view are actually making one of our waste streams, instead of going to a place that is recycling the methane, potentially going to somewhere that's not recycling methane. So I think it's very ironic that we're going to take it out of our waste stream.
I agree, Madam Chair, that irony is real. I guess the government's rules are aimed at New Zealand's landfills, not many of which operate at the technologically advanced state of Cape Valley. But yes, that irony for us and Cape Valley is obvious. Yep.
Thank you. Any more questions, or someone like to move or direction? Or comments? Or they just comments, or, yeah. Right.
Madam Chair, it would be helpful to have council resolutions supporting those recommendations, just like the other ones though, so that we're on solid ground in replying to the submitters.
I'll support those recommendations.
Would you, okay, you'll move, thank you. A seconder? Oh, it'll be Lane here to second that.
We did discuss widening. Do I need to move that we widen the rural? Investigate the, yes,
thank you.
Opening, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, the recommendation is simply noting that they're locked open for particular reasons. I think a piece of work that says, are they locked too narrowly, and what's the implications of wider, is a piece of work that we will undertake. But this is saying they're locked for a particular reason, and that feedback should go to the submitters.
And that might need to stay that narrow.
It also support the waste to energy systems where appropriate.
Thank you. So we've had a move from the seconder. All in favour? Say aye. Yeah. Against? We've carried that. No more discussion. Oh, sorry, we got Russell. Do you want to say it? No. Yeah. Right.
This is the last slide, I believe.
Yeah. Any other comments there?
Yep. We've talked about CBD collection trucks, and also note the request for residential collection trucks to come at more regular times of the day. I think it's again a proposal just that we respond to submitters explaining the constraints around that decision and the implications of a higher level of service and impacts on cost. We had a number of people ask the question about how much recycling is actually recycled, and we've got some information in the officer comments, and you also heard Justin's response today. I think we have. So again, it's just about really responding to people and addressing their genuine concerns.
Right, Carolyn.
And I think I'm happy to move these recommendations, but I also wanted to make sure that we answered Liz's question with regards to the recycling from the industrial aspect, like the building aspect, versus, you asked that question, Liz, versus the recycling done in residential, so that we just can see what those differences are.
Yes, while you were having that debate, I have emailed the chairman of Cape Valley to see whether he can quickly answer that. He hasn't replied to date, but I don't think it'll take us long to give you that proportion.
So do we need to put this in any other comments aspect?
No.
No, okay.
Thanks, Carolyn. So Carolyn, move that Phil, are you going to second that, or you got something else to add?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to second it. I was just going to say that, you know, I think the collection trucks do a pretty darn good job, and if your bin's out a bit later, then you think, oh, okay, there's obviously some sort of a hiccup somewhere, but it'll get collected, but expecting it to roll up at 7:02 a.m. regularly is just ridiculous. So, yeah, happy to second.
Thank you for that. All in favour, please say aye. Thanks. Nobody. Right. Carried.
Okay.
Right.
So next step will be a paper to council. We're certainly targeting the 30th of October, which is reasonably quick turnaround, but we've got some clear guidance. Got a little bit of work to do around an event definition. Would prefer to have that definition in the papers that you get for the 30th of October. Failing that, then we're talking about the 20th of November, but I'm quite keen to hit 30th October, as I'm sure you are too. And that's all we got.
Right. Just like to thank everybody for their input and today and staff. It's been some good discussions, and we shall move forward and look forward to what comes back.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's the end of the session.